It brings us to the big one. Is Greg Berhalter the gentleman that we need in this moment for another cycle to take us to the next level of development?
No.
It's Rog, and the World Cup is at the quarter-final stage. And the United States, we're only still in the tournament deep inside the mind of Alexi Lalas. Nope, we were bounced. We were given a cruel footballing lesson by Louis van Gaal and the Netherlands. And in the United States, defeating a men's World Cup is always a strange, emotional experience. We yearn so much. We so badly want to dream. And we always accentuate the positives. You know, talk about the experience we get out the next time. The headlines in the English media, though, were actually more fascinating to read, more objective. USA face harsh reality of next step after Netherlands tactical dissection, said The Independent. And the good news is the wait for the next World Cup is just 3.5 years away because of this idiotic Qatar November thing. Yes, it's just 1,280 days until the men's World Cup, which will take place on home soil. So as the World Cup pauses for breath ahead of its heavyweight climax to come, I want to pause for thought when the smoke on the United States defeat is cleared, and welcome back, my friend, to me, the smartest analyst in the United States from ESPN and the mighty Futbol Americas on ESPN Plus. It's a joy to welcome back from Qatar, Mr. Herculez Gomez.
Raj, thanks for the introduction. How you doing, my man? Missed you.
Oh, man, I'm alive, like you and anyone that is covering the day-to-day wonders, the day-to-day grinding wonders, I'd say, of the World Cup. We're both barely hanging on. So let's dive right in. Herc, the United States have been out of the tournament for 4 days as we pod. Take me back, though, to the final whistle of the game against the Netherlands. What were your dominant emotions? Were you proud of the boys or were you disappointed?
I was definitely proud of them. My expectation level heading into this tournament wasn't as high as most. From the outside looking in, I definitely saw a team with a lot of doubts. And in that first half versus Wales, I started thinking to myself, like, wow, this is a different team. The mindset, the execution, tactically, physically, they deployed a lot of things that the U.S. men's national team has always been known for at the World Cup: the fight, the spirit, the discipline, trying to be defensively sound. But they were very nuanced in the way they attacked, which is something that the U.S. men's national team we've not seen at this level for quite some time. And in the second 45 versus Wales, you get brought down. You're like, well, I've seen this before. This is something we've seen in World Cup qualifying, especially on the road. And for Greg Berhalter and the guys to respond the way they did versus England, who you can see how potent they are going forward. You can see how powerful and how dominant they can be. You can see that bench and how any team in this World Cup would love to have those options coming off the bench. And how they are one of the tournament favorites. You're like, wow, that's a complete performance. 90 minutes where you thought they should have had more than a 0-0 tie. You have highs and lows, and you manage to complete a goal of advancing, which is no easy feat. People shouldn't take for granted how difficult the World Cup can be. There's a reason only 8 teams have won it, right, Raj? It's no cakewalk. To play against a team in the Netherlands who many thought they had a great chance. And, I'm one of those people that thought they had a great chance. I work here at ESPN.
They've been the United States.
Yes, the United States. I work here at ESPN and in English with our UK colleagues and in Spanish with our Latin American colleagues. I work on a bunch of different shows. And as the days are progressing, everybody's picking the U.S. in this matchup. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't like this. And if I'm not liking it, I know the Dutch aren't liking it. Van Gaal's not liking it. He's sitting there thinking, like, Greg Berhalter is going to beat us? They think they're good? Okay, show us how good you are. Here's the ball. And they based a game plan, a tactical analysis on them doing precisely that. And listen, goals change games. We can talk about how things may have been different if Christian Pulisic put that ball in 5-6 minutes in. He puts that in. Now they're chasing the game. Now that tactical game plan goes out the window. But when you don't, when you forgive very elite teams, they make you play for it. And that is a coach who knew exactly the way the game was going to go unfold.
Yeah, that was a coach who knew how it was going to unfold. And from our perspective, we were naive, right?
Yes, that's a perfect word, Raj, is naive. It doesn't mean you're bad. It just means you're naive. There's a reason you were so successful against England, because you weren't naive. You knew exactly that they can hurt you, and you wanted to limit those spaces. They limited those opportunities against England, and it struck me as so odd that Greg Berhalter walked in like a sitting duck into this matchup with Van Gaal, one of the brilliant minds of the sport in this World Cup.
We will unpack some of this, but I will say the fact that we were naive, and I do believe very good, naive and good, makes it hurt all the bloody more, Herc. And that performance, let's be candid, 3-1 against the Dutch. If we're being honest, but for Matt Turner's wrist so steel, it could have been much, much worse. I don't know if you agree, but to me, a round of 16 exit, it's not enough. We often get into the round of 16 and then we kind of valiantly tap out. To me, that doesn't mean that it's success anymore. Do you agree?
That's a tough one, because we look at the names on this roster, we look at where they play, and you expect them to be beyond a round of 16 team. Why? Denmark didn't make it to a round of 16. Uruguay didn't make it to a round of 16. Belgium didn't make a round of 16. These are all players in their first World Cup, Raj, and this is why I do think getting out of the group was a success. Where it becomes a failure for me is you'll never have this moment again. You'll never have this pool of Dutch players that I think was accessible. I really feel if you go back with a different game plan and play them 10 out of 10 times, maybe it's still 50-50 and it's a 5-5, but you got more of a chance if you go back to the drawing board and play it differently. I don't think that was indicative of the talent level.
In the positive vibes, which we are going to continue, what did Greg Berhalter do well? And for me, built a happy culture, a good vibe culture, again in the setup, which Jurgen scorched. He really did, and it was rebuilt in this cycle. He also, I think you can doff the cap and say he recruited well. I mean, you can also flip the script and say, you know, a savvy young player sees that there's a World Cup coming to America. Commercially, we are a very attractive national team to play on right now. But let's not be cynical and say, Greg, he recruited dual nationals well. What else, when you look at him, do you say, man, positives?
I like what you said about culture. I think he did very well in instilling a culture with these young players. And it's not easy for a coach to come into a program and throw out the likes of Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore, Jeff Cameron, see players who have been there, done that for a while, and say, hey, I need these young guys to feel like they're the guys. They need to own this. He left off Zach Steffen and gave Matt Turner that peace of mind. You're my number one. Then spoke of hierarchies. You're the guy, which paid dividends because Matt Turner had himself a hell of a tournament. Decisions like that are not easy, and we have to give Greg Berhalter credit for that. And you have to acknowledge him and his dual nationals, his track record. I've been very critical with a lot of things of Greg Berhalter, but there are things that Greg Berhalter absolutely got right. Now, saying that, you still have to ask yourself if he's the person to take you to that next level.
So that brings us to the big one. Is Greg Berhalter the gentleman that we need in this moment for another cycle to take us to the next level of development?
No, I don't believe he is. If Greg Berhalter has shown you that what he's done in World Cup qualifying and in this World Cup is enough for the U.S. men's national team to do something special, quarterfinals or beyond, in 2026, show it to me, because I have not seen it. I believe you have to look elsewhere. If you can't realistically say, he showed me that he can have these players consistently playing at that level over his cycle, to do something special over the likes of not just the Netherlands, but an Argentina or Brazil that you could face in the round of 16, or a France that you could face in the round of 16, or an England that you could face in the round of 16, then you have to ask yourself, why would you hire him again? Why would you give him another cycle?
And it's a very weird reality. I need to acknowledge this because, you see the moment Carrera bounced, their manager, excellent, Bento, announced he's leaving. So many coaches actually left or were fired the moment their team exited or were given votes of confidence. And all we know, US Soccer are the only team I've seen who are like, we don't know if Greg will stay or go. Greg said, I'm going to think about it. I've not thought about it. Take a few weeks. And it's almost like this stasis. And I look at it, I'm like, Ernie Stewart, who makes a decision, gave a very cryptic set of comments to a couple of journalists that the results aren't what we judge him on, but it's, it's other elements.
But it is. Historically, it is.
But also, we either love the guy and we have a plan and he's our leader, or we are a one cycle and out kind of team and we're indebted to him. He did what he needed to do, the bare minimum of good, got out the group, left with, he could leave with his head held high. But let's say he's not. You've said he's not. Who will be the next manager, Herc? Who would you pick? And who do you think US Soccer will choose? Because they're often very different things.
Who would I pick?
Yeah.
This is a difficult one. Because there are managers tied to clubs, managers tied to national teams. You have to look at the pool and ask yourself if the players you have are special enough where you can have just any manager, or if you need a manager who prioritizes a system in order to win. I can't sit here and give you a set name. This is really like you have to analyze. I can give you a profile. With these type of players that you have in the pool, you need to have a manager who has a system, and that system is a bit more pragmatic in the way that France can be pragmatic, but vertical and dynamic in the way that a France can be vertical and dynamic. So what I am saying is, everybody saw, to me, France has changed football. 2018, if you look at their group play, you're like, there's no way a World Cup champion is coming out of this group with, I believe it was Australia, Peru, Denmark, and France. There's no way a World Cup champion is coming out of this group. You watch those games, I was there. There's no way a World Cup champion. And then they got better, played better, and they were so fast, so dynamic, so vertical, with players that can hurt you with speed. You need to prioritize a system like that.
Does this person have to be American? So you're
No.
the face of our team when the World Cup is on the home turf.
I know
Do you
that
think it
people are
matters
going to
to US
say
soccer?
no nation's ever won a World Cup with a foreign coach. There's a reason for that, because the nations who win the World Cup are footballing nations with plenty of coaches and plenty of players. And I think Greg Berhalter is going to stay. And the reason I say this, they had two objectives and they met both of them. Qualify to the World Cup, get out of the group. He met both of them. And two, you look at the U.S. men's national team and their modern history. When a coach gets out of the group, they've stuck with the coach.
Last question for you. One rip straight from the CONCACAF. At Juan John Jeddy wants to know, Herc, who's got a better chance of getting the Quinto Partido, a fifth game, a quarterfinal in 2026? USA, Canada, or Mexico, and why?
All of them.
Yes, the right answer. Let's flip it. Who's going to make a quarterfinal?
With what I've seen from all three national teams and them being home teams, I could really see all three of them making that quarterfinal run. And people are going to be like, what are you talking about? Mexico just didn't qualify for the second round. Canada didn't qualify for the second round. The U.S. men's national team in modern history, their best run was in 2002. Okay, they beat Portugal. They tied the host country, South Korea. And they got waxed by Poland. People forget that. They got waxed by Poland, and it was South Korea that backdoored the U.S. men's national team into the second round, where they faced a CONCACAF opponent in Mexico. And they beat Mexico in the second round to go on to lose to Germany in a game that they arguably probably should have won if not for a handball, Torsten Frings on the goal line.
From a Greg Berhalter shot.
From a Greg Berhalter header, correct. But Raj, people forget or downplay how minute or how slim these margins are. Tyler Adams after the game was talking about margins. It really is about margins, and because of these things, like, it's easy for us to say they can all go because they're host countries to that quinto partido. Yes, but it's on the draw as well. Like, it's so difficult to win games in the World Cup.
Subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos and courage.